Well, that's it. And I found moves in my bag. So my fault.
Hi everybody.
It's Christine and Monica from Eden Epsom.
Hi, Monica.
We'll just start in 1 minute. There's still a few people coming through, but we'll start in exactly 1 minute. Kia ora, everyone. We will get started. Thank you for attending. Interesting, the numbers, we've got 45 already, so it shows it's in high demand and not surprising, really. So my name is Martin Dowson. I'm the Chief Executive. Shortly, I'll hand over to John Fletcher. He's our expert. But I just want to sort of make a few sort of comments. But firstly, I just, I guess, just acknowledge, I hope everyone's sort of going well. It's sort of been pretty challenging times wherever you are and whatever your circumstances are. So, yeah, I hope you're going well. A few housekeeping, probably need to already. If you can just put yourself on mute. You probably all experienced it at that, but it does create an echo for the speaker otherwise. So the purpose today is to share and help everyone in the transition to the, through to the COVID protection framework or the traffic light system. So yeah, what we'll do is John will present for about 20 minutes. He'll go through a series of slides. We'll take questions at the end because maybe some of the questions will be sort of at the latter part of his presentation. And we'll try to answer all your questions. We're not sure whether we will or not, and if we can't, we'll commit to making sure that we do follow up with answers in the next day or two. So on Friday afternoon, we had a meeting with Sport NZ, and where we received the guidance at a glance guidelines, and that's what you can see on their website at the moment. Tomorrow, we've been led to believe that we'll get the detailed guidelines. So that's where I mean, where we may not be able to answer some of the questions today. Hopefully when we see the detailed guidelines, we'll be able to do that. Also, the government or Sport New Zealand have committed to sharing some fact sheets before the 3rd. And the 3 fact sheets will be my COVID pass and how to use it. A second one on events, which will be useful. And the 3rd will be on school sport. So if you'd like to ask a question, particularly near the end, use the old hand up, where you see the happy face with the little hand at the top of the screen. I'll make sure I'll go as much the order as possible. Alternatively, if you don't want to sort of speak and ask your question, you can ask your question through the chat area, where you can just see that little cursor beside the hand up, and I'll keep tracks of the questions. John will do all the answering, just so we've got one source of truth, but I'll facilitate the questions, and Jason Fletcher may help me if I'm a bit slow or missed anyone. So without further ado, John, what's the story?
Cool. Thanks, Martin. So yeah, as Martin mentioned, this all came to us Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock. We found out at the same time as every other sport did, and we've been working since that time to try and figure out exactly what it means for our squash clubs in particular. So there was the email that went out on Friday afternoon to the clubs, so I'll run through most of the detail that was in there. I'll go through the various settings that your club may find itself in, one or more of those, and need to make decisions around those. And also, as Martin said, there is a lot more guidance still to come out as well. So if there's something that we can't answer now, and there probably will be, we'll have some more drop-in sessions with Sport New Zealand over the coming weeks. So we'll make sure that we can get answers to everything as well. So I'll get into things straight away. So this is just sort of, as I said, covering some of that detail that we sent out to everyone on Friday. So basically, what is the COVID protection framework? So as we know, it is the traffic light system. We've got red, orange, and green. So red is designed to protect those at-risk people and their health system. Orange is to reduce increasing community transmission that's putting pressure on the health system. And green is designed just to minimise the cases of community transmission. For those of you that may have tuned in at 4 o'clock to the Prime Minister's announcement, they have let everyone know what regions will be in the various settings when that comes into effect on Friday. So there are a number of districts that will be in red, which are the Northland, Auckland, Taupo and Rotorua Lakes District, Kawerau, Whakatane, Opotiki districts, Gisborne District, Wairoa District, Rangatake, Whanganui and Raiapehu. So I was trying to write all those down when Jacinda was rattling them off, but didn't quite get it. So thankfully I managed to capture those afterwards. So a number of districts there, and then the rest of the North Island and the whole of the South Island will move in at orange. So as mentioned, that takes effect from 11:59 p.m. on Thursday night. So when we open up the clubs on Friday, we'll be in the framework. So hopefully all the clubs are aware of if they do fall under those red regions there and can make plans accordingly. So there are some changes coming away from the alert levels that we're all used to into the CPF, the COVID protection framework. So we used to have lots of talking around bubbles, physical distancing, additional rules, toilets being closed, which many of you with rackets clubs with tennis courts being open at the moment would know that the toilets can't be used as well. Sharing of equipment, so it's been about not sharing if you don't need to, and then there's been separate rules for HP Sport. So we're moving away from all that, and a lot of the talk is around vaccine passes. We've got defined spaces, gatherings, so that is the key one for social sport that squash is part of. Controlled and uncontrolled access, and then that comes into when we start talking about events, and 1 meter distancing. So a lot of the rules around capacity for facilities is around 1 person per square meter, with distancing not required. whereas the old rules were sort of need to be physically distanced from one another by 1 or 2 meters, depending on those settings. So a little bit of a change in terminology that we just need to be aware of. I won't go through this one in too much detail, but this is from the Unite Against COVID website, the government website. So this was updated on Friday, and it makes it a lot clearer. I think we were working for a couple of weeks off the fact that it only had gyms mentioned in here, which I think probably all the sports assumed that sports was going to be lumped in with that, but it's under gatherings now. You'll see that social sports has been specified just to make it a bit clearer what we fall under. So I won't go into detail much in that one, but there was a link sent out, and that's on the official COVID website. What will be more important will be the guidance on the Sport New Zealand website, which I've got in a couple of slides' time. So as you'll see when we go through the Sport New Zealand guidance, is there are a lot of different settings that we'll talk about, and the rules can differ under each of them. So we have organised community sport and recreation, which includes indoor and outdoor. So that squash does fall under that one. Gyms, so there may be different rules if a squash club has a gym as part of that. Events, so this we feel does talk about large events with controlled entry, ticketing, focusing on spectators. I'll touch on this a bit later, but we're still waiting on some really clear guidance as to what things like a squash tournament, whether that's a gathering or an event. There's unorganised as well. I guess with squash we have organised and unorganised, depending on whether we've got club events happening, just sort of in-house stuff, but there's not a lot of difference between those ones, which is nice. Club rooms, and then club rooms with hospitality offering. Most would be used to having the different settings for hospitality when opening the club bar and kitchen. There's school sports, council-owned pools and rec centres. So there will be a few squash clubs that are within sort of larger multi-sport facilities or council-owned centres, and then outdoor exercise groups. So a lot of different settings. So there is a lot of detail to go through in these next couple. So yeah, I'll pick out the main points. And as I said, this will all come out again. It's easy to find on the Sport New Zealand website, and we're producing some FAQs which will sort of make it a bit more clearer. So this is how sport will operate under the different settings. So probably the main thing to take notice of is the top 2 settings. So we've got organised community sport and recreation, as well as unorganised sport and recreation. And this is either controlled or uncontrolled entry, but is talking about sort of community sport. So what does that mean under the different settings? So obviously there are 2. You can mandate whether you want people to be required to verify that they are vaccinated through their My Vaccine Pass, or it may be that there is no vaccine pass needed to be able to take part. So obviously different restrictions, a lot less restrictions if vaccine passes are used. So under red, so this would be those clubs just mentioned before, in particular the Auckland ones. So if you're mandating vaccination for participants and members, then you can have up to 100 people per gathering, which once again is based on allowing 1 square metre of space per person. So basically up to 100, there's not going to be any squash clubs more than 100 square metres. And also note as well that there is around face masks, the terminology has changed there a little bit. There's now face masks encouraged when not playing. If vaccine passes aren't mandated, then you can have up to 25 people per gathering within a club. Under orange, with vaccine passes, it is open. There are no limits. Without vaccination passes, up to 50 people per gathering. And then under green, once again, if vaccination passes are used, then it's open with no limits. And without vaccination passes, you're limited to up to 100 people per gathering. So I guess the key ones at the moment are red and orange, since all the countries in one of those 2 settings. So yeah, so either up to 25 people without vaccine passes, or up to 100 with vaccine passes for red. The same settings apply for organised and unorganised. Event is where it gets a little bit tricky and where we're trying to get some more clarification there. But without vaccine passes under red or orange, these can't go ahead. With vaccine passes in red, it's up to 100 people. So the same as for just organised community sport, and same in orange, there are no limits. Vaccination passes are used. The next one down is gyms. So if a squash club has a separate gym set aside that members can use, without the vaccine passes, they cannot operate under red or orange. Once again, vaccine passes are used up to 100 people based on allowing 1 square metre of space per person. So many clubs will have a limit. Their gyms will be mostly fairly small, so they need to take note of the capacity limits there. And under orange with vaccine passes, there is no limits, and the same with green. There's a few more here. Top one's pretty, doesn't apply as much with outdoor exercise groups. If we go down to club rooms, so see another important part of any squash club, very similar, and it does match up with organised sport. So up to 100 people per gathering for vaccine passes, and then 25 without them for red and 50 for orange. Hospitality offering, so this is bar or kitchen or cafe operating in a club. Once again, up to 100 people in red for vaccine passes, and then no limits with vaccine passes for orange and green, and then contactless only for no vaccine passes for red or orange, and they can open up in green with up to 100 people. Council-owned pools and rec centres, so they can be open with capacity limited based on that 1 metre squared of space per person, and that is the same all the way across regardless of whether there are vaccination passes or not being used. And then another one for professional and semi-professional. So there is a lot of detail there, but as mentioned, there are some clubs that will need to look at a couple of different settings depending on what amenities they have in their club. But we'll touch some of those again in the FAQs. Once again, this is up on the Sport New Zealand website, and we will send it out again, but this is a really good reference point to come back to. So this is one we got from Sport New Zealand during the webinar last week, which does sort of highlight the gatherings in a little bit more detail, which is where most of squash will fall under. So it just highlights the red, orange and green that with the vaccine passes being checked, maximum of 100 people. I'll go through the FAQs around how to check vaccine passes as well. Just note that it does say in this guidance that checking of vaccine passes is required as best as reasonably practical in all settings. So I'll discuss what that means a bit later. So ice squash is getting a new field added, which will be updated tonight. So tomorrow morning, within each member profile, there should be a new little section called vaccination details. So if a club is using ice squash, and this will likely be required for all graded members for next season, that they can come in and tick if that vaccination pass has been received and cited and verified, and then a vaccination expiry date can be put in there. So this can only be done by club committee members. A vaccination report will show up in the report section of iSquash that committee members can download, which will give these details for each member. And we're working with the developer to look at how we can add tournament registrations and interclub into bringing through those vaccination details for players. So it may be that to be able to register for a tournament through iSquash, it will pick up whether the setting for that club is that players need to be vaccinated, then it will be able to pick up, and if that box is not ticked for a particular member, they won't be able to register their name. And also a good chance, reminder about the new privacy laws that came in last year, but just as important now, this is personal information that clubs are going to be recording, so clubs need to make sure that only current committee members have access to all this information about players. So if you go into the member management section of iSquash and look through your membership list, those people with that little icon there of the 3 people, that indicates whether they have committee access and can see those details for each member or not. So I've got a list of FAQs that are questions that sort of we've thought of or have come to us already. So I'll run through these ones, and these will also form an FAQ sheet that we'll put up on our website. A lot of these are taken from the Sport New Zealand's website as well, but we'll run through these anyway. So number one, how do we get proof of vaccination from members? So members need to provide their My Vaccine Pass. This can be done either electronically, so they can email you through a copy, or you can have a committee member site and verify that in person. If it is getting emailed through, then the email needs to be deleted as soon as that has been recorded. People's personal vaccine pass, vaccine pass can't be stored by the club at all. That would need to be deleted. But yeah, so two ways: you can do it electronically or in person. How can we record proof of vaccination? So I've just shown what will be able to done in iSquash from tomorrow. Those clubs using Hello Club and Pay to Play, I believe we've already had those settings added in there as well. But some clubs may just wish to record that in a spreadsheet if that's all they're using for their member management. And it just needs to record whether they have proof of vaccination and the expiry date on that. As mentioned, the physical or the actual pass can't be recorded. And number three, do we have to check for proof of vaccination every time someone enters the club? Short answer of that is no, you don't. Just on that previous gathering slide, they're aware that everything that needs to be done is as reasonably practical as possible. So for most clubs, this will be a case of whether all memberships are put on hold and they are reinstated once that vaccination proof has been provided, or for new members, that needs to be provided at the time of signing up to the club. And the other option is, should it be an event where people need to register, that can be done at the point of registration, or say the first time that someone turns up for their first match, if it's a tournament. But if a person turns up to the club 3 times for 3 matches in a tournament, it doesn't need to be checked every time. The club has done what's reasonably practical, which is checking at those initial points, and then it's individual responsibility after that to make sure people have a valid vaccine pass. Number 4, do under 12s count in gathering numbers? Obviously, at the moment, under 12s can't get the vaccination, but the answer for that one is no, they don't. So just because you may have some juniors there, it doesn't mean it becomes an unvaccinated setting at all. So it still is to the gathering numbers if all the people over the age of 12 were vaccinated. Number 5, what setting does our club bar come under? So there is that club rooms with hospitality setting. So we just need to have a look at those. Under red, there is still the seated and separated restrictions and that 1 person per square metre. And under orange and green, then that's not required if vaccine passes are used. I've kind of touched on number 6 already. So we have a small gym in our club. What setting does this fall under? So that does fall under the gyms one. So as I mentioned, there can be quite a number of different settings for each club, depending on what they have available. Our club has other commercial businesses within it, i.e. a pro shop. What setting does this fall under? So there are separate settings for retail. So there is guidance for those on the MB website, which I'll have a link to in FAQs. Essentially, retailers are able to open under any setting with or without vaccine passes, and there's just a capacity limit depending on the 1 person per square metre rule. 8, can a negative test be used rather than a vaccine pass? The answer for this one is no. So the My Vaccine Pass is the official way and should be the only way that is accepted as a vaccine pass. So a member can't bring a negative test and then come and utilise the facility if that is what, if the club has mandated vaccinations. Can a club switch between operating under vaccinated and unvaccinated settings? So this is kind of the rule that may make things a bit more difficult for clubs. The answer is that you can. So a club could have a period of time during the day where unvaccinated people come in and they're under the greater restrictions in terms of gathering limits, and then maybe the club closes for an hour for a clean and then reopens later on with under the vaccinated rules with the higher gathering limit. Obviously, there's a lot of it really depends on the capability of the clubs and the ability to clean those, but that is possible. But yeah, it would be very difficult for clubs to manage, but that is an option, and it may suit some clubs. Number 10, can I move from one traffic light setting region to play another? So at a player level, players can move between regions, and they will play sport under the settings of the region that they are in. Under the alert level, as it was, you took your alert level with you where you went. So that's kind of switched around a bit now that you use the rules of the region that you're going to be playing in. Number 11, what is an event as opposed to a gathering? So I touched on this briefly as well. We're still waiting on really good, clear guidance. They do say that for some sports it is clear. I guess an example is triathlon. You're having an event that is your sport. But for us, where we have varying number of gatherings and tournaments in-house, inter-club, and then large district and national events, really trying to get clarity around how big does it need to be be an event. But at this stage, we feel like they will be a gathering. The event seems to talk about larger ticketed spectator-focused events within sort of a stadium environment. But as soon as we get more guidance on that, we'll share that. And number 12, do we still have to wear a face mask when not on court? So the wording around this one seems to have changed a little bit as well. It's now encouraged when not on the court. I think strongly recommended was the previous wording. So that has changed slightly. But once again, that'll come down to each club if they wanted to mandate members to wear those on court. I know this is one of those tricky ones to try and manage. So yeah, clubs can make a decision around that one. I'll just go through one more slide quickly, and then we'll have Jason Fletcher from Squash Gym Palmerston North and Squash New Zealand just sort of run through the process that they went through when deciding on the best policy for their club. So obviously clubs have got a decision to make whether to utilise vaccine passes or not when the framework comes into effect from this Friday. For some clubs, they're going to have to make that decision pretty soon, particularly those in Auckland that are really looking forward to getting onto the court. But for some clubs, because of the limits and the size of their clubs, the decision may not need to be made straight away. So they might want to take a little bit of time to just consider their options. So there's just a few things clubs may want to take into account. So can a club operate safely without vaccine passes based on the limit numbers? What impact will that have on the club bar and other amenities, knowing that there are different rules for each setting, that a club bar and hospitality are slightly different. I guess the junior players, this does impact a lot. So those under 12 who can't get vaccinated. So will that have much impact on those juniors and their families? And then what impact will allowing unvaccinated players into the club have on vaccinated members? Yeah, it's up to a club to really know what their player base will be like. But yeah, I'm sure there will be some unvaccinated or some vaccinated members that may not feel that comfortable having unvaccinated players around as well. So yeah, a lot of things for the clubs to consider, and we certainly acknowledge it's maybe not be an easy one for some of them. So once the club committee's been able to make a decision, then just communicate that clearly with club members on what that position is and the rationale for that. And what does this mean for members? So if they are unvaccinated and they're currently a member, what does that mean? Is it a case of putting their membership on hold? Obviously letting them know that people have reasons for not getting vaccinated. And yeah, what do members who are vaccinated need to do to make sure that they can still access their club when they reopen or when the new framework comes into play? So have that process clear on how you want to implement that, and make it as easy for yourselves and your members as possible. And obviously there's still more decisions to be made at a district and national level regarding sort of larger national events, and then things like interclub competitions as well. Thankfully, it's right in the middle of the off season, so there's a little bit of time, but I'm sure we'll be having conversations around those over the next few weeks, noting that the season does kick off pretty quickly once the new year rolls around. So before we start taking some questions, I'll just hand over to Jason Fletcher, who can spend a couple of minutes letting us know how Squash Gym implemented their policy, and then we'll take some questions.
Do you want to unshare your screen, John?
I can. Right, so unshared. Right, Fletch, over to you.
Hey, thanks, John. Kia ora, everybody. Yeah, just to share the process we went through. We met as a committee. I suppose long story short, it was quite straightforward because we've got a gym in our complex, but we also reviewed some of the other aspects, and we've got a larger club, so we've got 8 courts, and we sort of looked at the numbers. In the numbers, we thought any one time we could potentially have more than 50 if we were in Orange, with people coming, waiting for their games, people playing, people having showers, people maybe having a drink in the bar. So we reviewed that, and then we looked at other things that we would host, including Business House, which has still got a couple of rounds to go. And yeah, that if we didn't, so we looked at all those numbers and the practicalities, and we decided to mandate vaccinations based on all the numbers that we would have, and the practical aspects of trying to manage even a mixed model didn't seem practical to us as a committee. So yeah, we decided based on that and the information that we had on Friday, which hasn't changed a lot, based on that traffic lights that came out from Sport NZ, to mandate vaccinations. So we sent an email out to all our members, confirming the decision by the committee, adjusting our health and safety policy to incorporate that. And yeah, and so far I think we've had, what we've asked for is members to either bring in or email through their vaccine certificates. We've asked them to do that by midnight Wednesday, and then our card access system, for anybody that haven't received it from, will be switched off to hopefully prompt them. So if we haven't got their vaccine certificates, their access to the club will be compromised. So, but yeah, we'll send out an email just to a nice email. I think it's a nice email to acknowledge it could be difficult for some members that choose not to or cannot get vaccinated, but we felt it was the most practical thing for us to do. And I think to date, I think we've done if James is online here, but I think we had about 10 to 15% of people already come back with their vaccine certificates. And we've had 1 or 2 members that can't get vaccinated or choose not to contact us as well.
Cool. Thanks, Fletch. Right.
All right.
We got any
So we have
questions?
Ainsley first. Do you want to unmute Ainsley and ask your question?
Did I indicate I wanted to ask a question?
Oh, you did, but you can put your hand down. That's fine. We'll
Oh,
move.
sorry. That was a mistake. Sorry.
No problems. Phil.
Yeah, I just want to work out where you guys have come up with that you can operate a squash courts under the non-certification, non-vaccine pass, because I've just downloaded the latest government thing and it says if you're not using it, close proximity businesses, hairdressers, beauty salons, events, indoor, outdoor concerts and gyms are not able to operate. I can't see how you can differentiate between a gym and a squash court. They're both the same activity, and I haven't seen any official thing apart from selective interpretation that a squash court's not a gym.
Yeah, that was what everyone was expecting before Friday came out. So yeah, so for the purposes
Well,
of
this is I've only just
framework,
downloaded it right now.
Yep. So if you go to the Sport New Zealand website, it's got all the rules around gatherings. So social sport is a gathering, and I think the COVID website as well. So if you get the one pager that's got the COVID protection framework, it's got gatherings and social sport on there as a gathering. So all the advice and what's come from Sport New Zealand, which is via the government, is that community sport, social sport is a gathering, not a gym.
Well, I don't read it that way, and I suppose that's why lawyers were invented. But it doesn't read that. I mean, this is surely the COVID-19 website is gospel and everyone else's is interpretation.
So
I
guess that it's on. So it's on the slide. If I can bring it up.
We can guarantee that, Phil, noting that we've been directed by Sport New Zealand, who have had long discussions with the ministry, and they validated our guidance. So even though I agree it is quite confusing, we speak with high confidence that that's the right message.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going vaccine pass anyway, so we're probably going to just do away with it.
Thank you. Heather.
Oops.
Heather Finlay. You're on mute if you're trying to speak. Yep.
I'm trying to. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's great that the players' tournaments will be vaccinated. I'm just wondering where you get near the end of the tournament when you've got family and friends that would like to come and watch players. I mean, how will that be controlled or whatever for vaccinated people?
Yep, that's probably one of the processes that needs to get worked through. There is a lot of detail to come out around the process. This is sort of a high overview. It may come down to the club's ability to control access to the club and whether people are scanning in when they enter the facility. And yeah, as the guidance has been that wherever practically possible, that they're aware that if you're talking about a large sports field, that it's going to be impossible to try and make sure that every single person who's spectating a community sport with friends and family and that sort of thing is going to have a vaccine pass. So you're sort of talking about a squash club. What can you do that's practically possible or reasonable to make sure that if that is part of what the club's stance is and what their policy is, that anyone that's entering their facility, and that comes down to some of the players' responsibility as well. They shouldn't be taking friends and family along if they know that they are unvaccinated, and that is the club policy. But yeah, how exactly is it going to be a simple scan that can be done at the entrance to clubs? There's still that detail to work out. Yeah.
Thank you. Paul Cornish, if Phil and Heather, if you don't want to recycle another question, just remove your hand. Otherwise, I'll ask you a little bit later. But Paul Cornish.
Yeah, hi, Paul from Shepherd's Park. An observation and a question. I mean, like Phil there, I was assuming, as we all were, that the sport would be subject to vaccine passes. So it's come as a bit of a rude shot not to have that. So as our own approach, we've done a risk assessment just to prove to our membership there is reason in that the sport hasn't been able to do that. We've had to come up with our own criteria to sort of prove that there actually is justification for forcing vaccine passes to sort of to avoid sort of too much challenging afterwards. So that was just our own approach to that. We're happy to go with vaccine passes, and always thought it would be the case. The question to John was around whether we cite vaccine passes, which is kind of less threatening. We see it, we don't keep it, we just jot down the details, as opposed to having them emailed to us. And we were going to go down the track of actually citing them at the club at a couple of sessions before we open, and then once we open, they can come down and just catch a committee member then. What are the sort of criteria, what are the pros cons there, John, as to whether we should be happy to accept emailed COVID passes? We weren't going down that.
Yeah, look, I guess every club's situation is different. Some of the larger clubs that might have a few hundred passes to get through may just find it easy to have them emailed in. As I said, there is that thing that if you do get them emailed in or sent in electronically, they do need to be deleted afterwards and can't be stored anywhere. But yeah, it's really, if you have a busy club night and you get most of your members coming down there, then yeah, it's pretty easy just to have everyone turn up at the first time and check them off as you come in. So yeah, every club's going to be in a bit of a different situation, but those are the two methods that you can do it.
So you're happy with the both? I mean, we should be able to accept electronic.
Yeah,
email.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what we've been told, that's acceptable.
So just in case that, in terms of that risk assessment, it's available on the Active website. It's quite a clever little risk assessment. It took me 10-15 minutes last night, and I feel a bit more confident now going forward with the requirement for passes now that we've done that assessment. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. And I notice some people are going to start writing some comments. And if you've got any sort of good examples or want to share anything for others, then please do that on the chat here, because that's really useful for others to see. So thank you. Monica.
No, that's not it.
So if,
Okay. Hey, no, we were just wondering about like actually, funnily enough, in addition to what was just being said, so we're looking at it when we send an email out, we'll be asking them to email, because it's going to be easier with the amount of members we've got, email electronically, and for those that are reluctant to go electronically, come into the club and we can cite it then. Is there an issue with rolling out slowly, given that we've only got 3 days to get this sorted, and having a bit of a slow rollout and giving people the opportunity and setting a date, say mid-December, that they have to have their vaccination certificates to us? And maybe we just kind of look at bookings. I know it's an extra kind of admin thing, but we look at bookings and make sure that the people that are coming in the next, say, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, have presented their vaccination certificates to us. I mean, is there an issue, or if?
I guess if they have presented it, if the club stance is that you need to be vaccinated and that's been presented.
We have already.
Yeah,
Yep.
our club
stance is
Yep.
everyone has to be vaccinated.
But is there an issue with a slow rollout, like slowly, you know, like?
No, I mean, if someone's not planning on,
period.
yeah, someone's not planning on playing for the next week or so and they haven't sent their details, then yeah, I mean, the club is open. I'm assuming that if they haven't given their pass, then maybe their access isn't granted yet, or they've been put on hold until that gets reinstated. So yeah, if it's kind of up to the member then, isn't it? If they want to use the club, then they need to get it in before they can do that.
So we do have to deactivate everyone unless we've seen their passes, or can we say those coming to the club in the next 4 days, we need to see your pass?
Yeah, is
Friday, or that they or we have to deactivate 760 members.
Yeah, it's really what works. If you're going to be there, if you're going to be open certain times and have someone check everyone's pass when they come in, so you'd need to be confident that if you were going to open, that everyone that goes into that club, because you've stated that you need to be, you have to be vaccinated to come and play, then you need to be sure that that's been checked off and that people just aren't coming in who may be a member but haven't been vaccinated and aren't coming in and using the facility. So yeah,
we're just a bit concerned that 3 days might be a bit confrontational with some of our members. That was, yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong, but it certainly
yeah.
wasn't ideal not getting this till Friday afternoon.
At
least in a week until it actually comes out.
And committee, when you talk about committee, you're talking about committee or somebody assigned, as in like us. We're not committee members, we're staff.
Administrators as well.
Okay.
So you need access to the member database and you need to be able to record all that information. So, But yeah, for you guys, I guess not everyone's going to turn up on the first day and want to play. So maybe you just, maybe you need to check bookings, or say booking can't be made until they've had their pass verified without having to get 700 done in the next couple of days, but just on sort of a needs basis until you can get through them.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a few
Gareth.
I think there's a few comments coming up talking about the Verify app being really easy to use and to download. So, we can send links out to how clubs can download that as well and use that at their venue. Sorry, Gareth.
Hi, John. My question is specifically, maybe I can answer others' questions as well, relating to ice squash. I know you got the tick there and the date, and it's pretty good for a few days anyways. My question is, yes, okay, we're going to do this huge admin exercise now to get everybody ticked. And now that you got to remember there's 6 months that this thing is valid for. It's an administrative absolutely nightmare getting this just an ice squash user. So my question is, if we got a date on there 6 months from now, how on earth is ice squash just gonna, are you either gonna send out an email, or is the tick gonna disappear after 6 months? Do you know what I'm getting at? It's already a lot of admin as it is.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, a reminder email might be something that we can look at adding in there. Yeah, the 6-month expiry is, I agree, it's a pain in the ass. I mean, there are, how did Sport New Zealand word it? Yeah. Yeah, it really can be up to the responsibility of the individual once it has been recorded to make sure that that is kept up to date. But I think having some reminders or some way, I know Hello Club have got one, they've set theirs up so that as soon as it passes the expiry date, if that hasn't been set up, then it sort of turns off their membership and turns off access into the club, which, yeah, once again, can be a bit of an admin nightmare as well. But there needs to be some way that we can capture that before it gets to that and people are yeah, can send through their updated passes.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, yes, initially fine, but ongoing, this is going to be really difficult for unmanned facilities like 90% of the clubs are. That's all.
Yep.
Just something to think about.
Yeah. Oh, you're not wrong. I think, yeah, for everyone, even ourselves trying to, another 6 months, get to go and get it updated or whatever. Yeah, cool. We'll look at some ideas around how we can make that easy.
There's a question on the chat, John. Is there any guidance on cleaning requirements under the various settings?
None that I've seen so far. I imagine just all the usual health and safety cleaning protocols that clubs would have in place from the past couple of years would still be sufficient. I guess you'd only need to pretty specify something different if you were going to go with the kind of the splitting of the between vaccinated and unvaccinated gatherings, but everything else should be able to still be used the same as usual.
So just checking, Phil and Monica still have their hand up. Phil, have you got another question?
Yeah, so the 6 months is only for the early getters. They've probably only got 4 months, and for those that got their last jab last week, they've got 6 months. So not everyone's going to be 6 months. It's the expiry. I have the Verifier app and have already used it. It's real easy just to verify it and then take a screenshot and then download it afterwards. Because one of the problems with the Verifier is it doesn't keep a record of who you've verified. So even though you verify them, you've either got to then write it down that you've verified them or have a bloody good memory of who you've done that day. So what I'm doing is just take a quick screenshot and then ditch them all after I've transferred them, and we're putting it in ClubSpark. So yeah, just thought that'd help some people who asked that question just before.
Cool. Thanks, Phil. That's a good idea.
Gerard.
Hi everybody, Gerard here from the North Shore Squash Club. One of the things that we're looking at doing is splitting our club into 2 different parts. So we're looking at separating the bar facility from the squash facility so that we can have up to a maximum of 100 squash players. And also we can have people in the bar, but it's completely separate with a separate entry. So we're looking at setting up a barrier system so there's no flow between the two. So with 2 different external entries. Have you got any comments on that, John?
Yeah, Tyler kind of explained that's what you're looking at doing. I guess that is fine. It's if there are a number of gatherings within one indoor space, yeah, it's just being careful of the airflow. There should be sort of separate airflows between them. But yeah, you've kind of got the separate entrance and everything to upstairs, and the squash players can sort of be kept downstairs and on the court. Maybe it's a case of maybe just not using court 5 potentially in the corner there, because people will be going through there to go out to the bathrooms and that kind of stuff, I guess, from upstairs. But yeah, other than that, if clubs do have other entrances and want to kind of keep things separate, especially for those larger clubs where you may want extra people in there, then yeah, it's certainly worth trying to look and think outside the box, see what can be done. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
I think we've exhausted the questions, but we'll just hold for a little while. If anyone's got anything to share, it's always nice to hear what's going well. Alternatively, last chance for any sort of questions or comments.
there a question that just
Got
popped
one.
up? Sorry.
Colin.
Yeah, it's just wondering about what your plan is to assess the result of what people do at red or amber or green. So most clubs, I think, listening to them, are all heading down towards the accepting vaccine pass route. It would be nice just to revisit that in 2-3 months or whatever, and just figure out how successful that was, because there will be some members that will leave. There'll be some members that might leave, and there might be an opportunity to go to another club where it's a little bit more open in terms of whether they accept the passes or not. So it would be good to assess which path would have been good in the benefit of hindsight, in case we have other things that come up that we may have to face these decisions again. It would be nice to learn some lessons rather than reinvent the wheel each time.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a good point. Certainly worthwhile doing, because I think, yeah, they're making another announcement on the settings on the 15th of December. Don't quote me on that, and then another one on the 17th of January. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see as you sort of move through the levels. When things open up, to whether people start coming back into those that may not have been able to access it at the start, but. No, that would be certainly useful information. So thanks for that, Colin. Good idea.
Paul from Shepherd's Park again. One thing I'm using on is mask wearing being encouraged. I mean, sports people the world over feel themselves bulletproof. They're going to be playing in a small area against each other, or maybe 2 other people over a period of time. They're going to be fully intoxicated with each other's aerosols. They're going to come off court and you're going to say, would you mind wearing a mask now? Same people upstairs, downstairs probably play the game. I'm just interested to know what other clubs might choose to do. If we go for a very strict approach, other clubs less so, we might lose members because they go to, as someone was implying a moment ago, to a club that's got a softer policy. Given that we're looking for contact tracing, we're going for double vax and limited numbers, people we know, we're taking those precautions. What should we feel about mask wearing as well? That's my question to anyone who might want to answer.
So John, maybe you have a quick response, but can make some feedback to Paul via the comments.
Yeah, so I think this is one of those ones that's, yeah, it's easier to say than actually implement and get your members to follow along. I know from pretty much every club that I've been into since it came out, even if it is mandatory, it's very difficult to get people used to it. They feel so comfortable in a squash club, they feel like they're at home pretty much, and no one's sitting around at home wearing masks. Yeah, look, it is encouraged. I think probably maybe under the red settings, the clubs might be more interested in trying to push that as much as possible. Once again, all you can do is make a call on what you feel is best for your club, and then it's up to the responsibility of the individual players to actually do it and wear a mask if that's what you want to go with. Yeah, it is a difficult one. I mean, a lot of people are now used to wearing it in supermarkets, and every time you go into a cafe or a bar until you get a drink that you're sitting there with a mask on. So it's not completely foreign to people now, but yeah, as you said, you're going to be getting sweaty and running right next to someone for an hour. Yeah, is it going to make much difference? I guess probably in a larger gathering setting you would, but for general unorganised club play, it's probably not such a major factor, I wouldn't have thought.
Can't tell them, it is only encouraged as well.
A couple more questions, John, on, sorry. I've got a bit of scrappy internet. Apologies if I'm not coming through, John, but there's a couple of questions on chat. What about people who can't get vaccination for whatever reason? If your club is not allowing non-vaccinated people in, is it just sorry you can't come in?
So my understanding is that if people can't get vaccinated for a medical reason, then they can still get a My Vaccine Pass made out to them. So they can should still be able to access the club for that reason.
We had someone just the other day try and claim medical reasons, but the government's come out and said there's less than 100 people in New Zealand that can't have the vaccine for medical reasons. Yeah. So he quickly backtracked on that. Yeah. And he was one of our coaches.
Yep.
So I've got a mad dog in my background. Just knocked down my Christmas tree. That's not a very good spirit. Another question, John. Off court, you can choose to mask and distance, but if a player doesn't want to take the court with an unvaccinated player, what rights do they have?
So I guess there's a couple of different scenarios where that might be. If it's club play, I guess it's the club. If it comes down to the club rules, then people who join up a club and are a member of it, then they're following those rules of the club. And if they're allowing unvaccinated people, I guess it's up to the members to make sure they know who they're playing against. In terms of rights, not entirely sure. I guess with a tournament or something like that, then players will be aware at the time that they register whether it is just for vaccinated players or whether it's open to vaccinated and unvaccinated, so they can make that call at that time. But yeah, in a club setting, most people would know who they're playing against, and yeah, they would have to make that decision themselves. What level of risk are they willing to take on? Whether they want to play with unvaccinated people or not would be a personal decision, I imagine. But that could be one of the things that we still get some more guidance around and coming out. There are a lot of technical things and tricky things like that there will be a lot more advice coming out on.
Okay. So last chance to ask questions, but I'll sort of wrap up, and if they do come in, we'll take them. But where to from here? We do have another question, but I'll wrap up anyway. That's and then ask questions. So we do know we'll get a lot more detailed information tomorrow, and so we're committed to make sure that we'll share that online, and again probably via message from John. And again, we're pretty comfortable having another webinar, maybe on the Thursday. We'll see how we go from the clarity and the confusion there is. But anyway, there's another one. So Gerard,
just one other point. At the North Shore Squash Club, we've come up with a ventilation plan, given that COVID is an airborne virus and it's not something that's been discussed at all in this forum. And it can be something that can be fairly easily addressed just in terms of windows and doors, etc. So you can actually get some air movement through a club. So I just thought I'd mention that because that could be something that other clubs may want to consider for just extra safety measures for participants in the club rooms.
Yeah, great point. Thank you. And I think Phil's got his hand up twice, once electronically and one.
Yeah, we have a member of our club who is the head of infectious diseases at North Shore Hospital. He's known as Dr. COVID North Shore, and he has recommended that there should be a change of air 6 times an hour in a squash court. And I don't know of any squash centre in New Zealand that has active ventilation like that. So most of it's passive, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't even know how to measure that. That's
yeah. Six times an hour is a fair whack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we will. Oh, look, there's another question. Are you saying that there'll be tournaments that are unvaccinated? If there are, these unvaccinated tournaments will be advertised?
Yeah, so the intention is to set something up in ice squash so that when players register for a tournament, then it can pick up whether they are vaccinated or not. I imagine that, especially early on in the year next year in Auckland, and this may be determined based on what the events ruling is, what the definition there is, but there would be the option. So yeah, and maybe that it's a setting when a club sets up a tournament, the players need to be vaccinated, and that is checked through the ice squash process. But it could just be as likely that somewhere in Southland that's at a small 2-court club that still wouldn't meet the gathering restriction on having a small tournament, even without the COVID vaccine passes, wouldn't need to have it. So there's a whole lot of different situations. Clubs need to undertake their own risk assessment around that and what they're going to require from players. So, it'll be an ice squash, so that would be part of the conditions of entry. So it would be advertised in there. Yeah.
Okay, we'll wrap it up. Mindful of everyone's time. thank you for attending. Hopefully this has been useful. It's good just to share and listen to others. And again, we'll definitely be posting something or sending an email, whether it's tomorrow or the following day, just on what details we can gather. So yeah, take care everyone, and yeah, look forward to seeing some of you on the squash court sometime soon. Hey Phil.
Yeah, yeah.
He's my manager.